Why Johnny Carson said never again to these famous guests on The Tonight Show. He smiled, cracked a joke, and sipped from his coffee mug like nothing could shake him. But even Johnny Carson had limits. Behind the charm and wit of The Tonight Show sat a man who, at times, had to draw a hard line. At his peak, Carson pulled in more nightly viewers than Monday Night Football, serving up laughs and easy conversation to millions. Most nights, he made it look effortless. But not every guest brought laughs. Some brought chaos. Behind that smooth exterior was a man who knew exactly where to draw the line, and once it was crossed, there was no coming back. A handful of celebrities managed to push Carson so far. They earned lifetime bans from his show. Not suspensions, bans. Permanent exile due to lies, threats, or behavior so disruptive, not even Carson's grin could smooth it over. Take Wayne Newton, for instance, a ban born out of a punchline gone wrong. Carson once joked, "Las Vegas is installing brighter stage lights. Wayne Newton's hair needs photosynthesis." The audience howled. Newton didn't. At the time, the singer had just sunk millions into buying the Aladdin Hotel. To him, Carson's jab wasn't funny, it was damaging. In 1980, without warning, Newton stormed into NBC Burbank during a live taping day. Surveillance footage showed him pacing the halls, fists clenched, silk shirt half open, fury in his stride. He barged into Carson's office mid-meeting and barked, "These jokes stop now, or I'll kick your ass right here." Carson didn't flinch. He calmly called security and made it clear, Wayne Newton is no longer allowed in this building, ever. The blacklist was swift and silent. No public announcement, just a quiet but ironclad command. Newton's photo circulated among NBC staff with strict instructions. Do not admit. That night's script was scrubbed of Newton mentions, not out of fear, but out of principle. Carson had made a decision. Anyone who used threats instead of wit had no place in his studio. When self-proclaimed psychic Uri Geller was booked for The Tonight Show in 1973, Johnny Carson wasn't just hosting, he was laying a trap. Years of childhood magic tricks had made Carson allergic to anyone claiming real supernatural powers. So this time, he was ready. Before the show, Carson secretly called in James Randi, a famous skeptic and magician, to set the stage for an airtight test. No props from Geller, no room for sleight of hand. Everything, from the spoons to the sealed film canisters, was locked down by the show's prop master Bobby Quinn until airtime. Carson opened the show with charm, teasing, "Tonight, we'll bend some minds, maybe even some metal." Geller entered, polished and confident, but the moment he was handed the sealed envelopes, his demeanor cracked. He closed his eyes, pressed the paper to his forehead, and mumbled, "I feel drained." The audience began shifting in their seats. Geller floundered, offering excuses. Carson remained calm but sharp, eventually handing him a spoon. Still, nothing. No bending. No tricks. Just a long, awkward silence. "He's really suspicious, you know," Geller said nervously. "I'm having a hard time with you. I don't mean to be, Yuri. I really don't. Just keep looking. Let me rest a little, all right?" That was all Uri Geller could mumble when the cameras started rolling. His usual confidence vanished. The spoon-bending psychic, famous for claiming supernatural powers, now looked like a deer in headlights, cornered, rattled, and suddenly human. Johnny Carson leaned in, eyebrows raised. "Well, I'm not trying to press you," he said calmly. "I really am not." But the tension was undeniable. Geller stumbled, blaming everything from the studio's energy to the lunar cycle. What he didn't know was that Carson had set a trap, with help from famed skeptic James Randi. Every prop on stage had been prepped and sealed. Geller couldn't cheat, and it showed. Carson, still smiling, slipped in a cold jab. "We'll give you as much time as you need in the next life." The audience roared. Geller's face flushed red. Backstage, Carson made it clear. "We exposed him as a fraud on national television. He's never coming back." It was the last time he'd appear on Carson's stage. The king of late night had no tolerance for fraud, and he just exposed one on live TV. Viewer letters poured in, some praising the takedown, others accusing Carson of cruelty. Meanwhile, Geller's bookings soared. He blamed NBC for sabotage. Carson was livid. "We revealed his lies and made him wealthy. But not here. Never again." From that day on, The Tonight Show had a new rule. Paranormal guests would use only studio-supplied props, and known fraudsters? Banned for life. Chevy Chase found out the hard way. His offense? Arrogance. On his first appearance in 1976, he took playful jabs at Carson's golf game, and paid the price. Chevy Chase, fresh off his 1978 success with Saturday Night Live and the hit film Foul Play, sauntered onto The Tonight Show stage, not as a guest, but as if auditioning for the throne itself. Johnny Carson, the undisputed king of late night, welcomed him with polite admiration, but what began as warm recognition quickly turned to quiet fury. 10 million in 3 days, Chase bragged, flashing a smug grin. Not bad for a weekend, right? Then, gesturing around the studio, he added with a smirk, "You've got quite the comfortable little operation here." The crowd chuckled. Carson's smile didn't reach his eyes. When prompted to talk about his new movie, Chase veered off script, rambling about celebrity run-ins at LAX. Then came the jab. "I could probably outdrive you, maybe even out-host you too." Laughter wavered into murmurs. Carson's pencil began tapping. Crew members backstage felt the temperature drop. During the break, Chase kept bragging. "I'll leave my NBC contact when you guys need younger blood at 11:30, he joked. Carson didn't respond, but his silence was final. Later, Carson stormed into producer Peter Lasalle's office. 15 years I've built this place, he fumed, and some punk thinks he's taking over? He's done. Finished." The ban was immediate and total. Chevy Chase had challenged the crown and was cast out. Calls to agents went unanswered. Years later, when Chase launched his own late-night show, reporters asked if Carson had offered any advice. "None," Chase admitted. Carson's team confirmed, no calls, no notes, just silence. And when the Chevy Chase show collapsed in 5 weeks, everyone at NBC knew Carson's blacklist held strong. Once you mock the king, you don't get a second chance. Johnny Carson valued spontaneity the way a jazz musician treasures improv. Fluid, electric, alive. So when Bob Hope showed up armed with cue cards and a script tighter than a detergent ad, it felt like someone had handed Carson sheet music at a jam session. During taping, Hope barely made eye contact. He stared past Carson at the cards stationed near the cameras, waiting for his pre-written zingers to land. Carson tried to break the mold. Once, he tossed Hope an unscripted follow-up. Hope blinked, checked his cards, and plowed ahead with the joke he'd rehearsed anyway. The audience chuckled, politely. But backstage, producers noticed Carson's grip tightening around his pencil until his knuckles turned white. The final straw came in 1978, when Hope plugged Texaco 3 times in under 7 minutes. On air, Carson quipped, "Texaco's getting more airtime than I am." Off air, he wasn't joking. He pulled producers aside. No more infomercials disguised as interviews. For years, Hope's icon status shielded him from criticism, but Carson had his limits. Internal memos show Carson campaigning for Hope's quiet removal. He's not doing TV. He's reading ads with laugh tracks. NBC resisted. Hope's specials raked in millions. But Carson made it clear, keep him and I walk. NBC blinked. Hope was never officially banned, just never booked again. The mood in Carson's dressing room visibly lightened after. The message was clear. Even legends couldn't treat The Tonight Show like a commercial break. Charlton Heston learned that lesson next. While Carson favored snappy exchanges, Heston treated every question like a Senate hearing. Ask about an on-set injury, and you'd get 10 minutes on Greek theater, the Second Amendment, and his ranching childhood, before the rib story arrived. The band sat idle. Carson smiled thinly. Viewers tuned out. After one 1987 appearance, producers logged just 9 laughs, well below the 30-plus average. The breaking point came during a discussion on movie violence. Heston launched into a 15-minute monologue about freedom, quoting Plutarch, and suggesting Carson visit the NRA museum. "He's hosting his own show inside mine," Carson snapped to producers. "And it's not even entertaining." Some guests left Johnny Carson laughing. Others left him fuming, and a rare few left him vowing, never again. The ban on Charlton Heston was swift and unambiguous. Carson's team got the memo. Heston was permanently blacklisted from guest rotation. "He's a brilliant actor," Carson admitted to his booking rep, "and probably a fine man, but he treats every question like it's his cue to deliver the Gettysburg Address." Heston only realized he'd been iced out when his publicist's follow-up requests were met with silence. The message couldn't have been clearer. Oscars meant nothing if you bored the audience. Late-night television demanded rhythm, wit, and spontaneity, not theatrical monologues disguised as interviews. And Heston wasn't the only casualty of Carson's high standards. Don Rickles, the insult king with a machine gun mouth, once electrified the audience by skewering everyone in sight. Guests, strangers, even Carson himself. But the chaos he left in his wake eventually became too much. It all unraveled in 1976, when Rickles, guest hosting during Carson's vacation, shattered Johnny's prized walnut cigarette box.
Oh, I broke his box! I broke Carson's cigarette box!
A sentimental gift from a stagehand who'd once saved Carson's life during a studio fire. The next night, Carson stormed onto the CPO Sharkey set, cameras rolling, holding up the broken box like evidence at a trial. "You broke my box," he barked. The crowd roared. Rickles wilted. NBC milked the footage for years. But behind the scenes, Carson had already started tallying the damages, ignored timing cues, derailed segments, offensive jokes that crossed the censor's line. The shattered box was just the symbol. The final straw came in 1985, when Rickles mocked an overweight woman in the audience, triggering a flood of complaint letters. "Funny, sure," Carson muttered to his producers, "but it's toxic." And just like that, Rickles was quietly banned for life. They stayed cordial at parties, but Studio One was closed for good. Stagehands joked that life got safer. No flying props, no bruised egos. Even late-night royalty had limits. And those limits extended even to America's favorite neighbor. Fred Rogers seemed like the perfect guest. 5-minute chat, maybe a gentle puppet segment, something warm to cut through the celebrity noise. But when Rogers stepped on stage, everything slowed to a crawl. He paused mid-stage, offered a tiny wave, and in his gentle Pittsburgh lilt said, "Thank you very much, friends. I'm very glad to be here." The applause awkwardly lingered. No one could tell if he was finished. Carson tried to lighten the mood. "Fred, I wore sneakers in your honor," he quipped, lifting a shiny loafer to show off white cads. Rogers smiled sweetly and clasped his hands. "That's very thoughtful, Johnny." The audience waited and waited. The pacing was disastrous. Carson's team scrapped plans for a return visit. Rogers was beloved, but not built for late night. For Carson, timing was everything. And no matter how famous, charming, or well-meaning the guest, if they couldn't keep up with the rhythm, they wouldn't be back. The silence was painful. Fred Rogers had just said, "Sneakers can help us feel ready to play." The studio audience offered polite, confused chuckles, waiting for Johnny Carson's witty comeback. It never came. Carson stared, momentarily lost. Rogers, serene as ever, considered his statement complete. The pause dragged. Inside the control booth, panic erupted. Camera angles scrambled. Cue card operators yanked jokes that no longer aligned. Everything, every beat, every laugh was now 30 seconds behind. Rogers spoke with measured calm, pausing 2 seconds between thoughts. It was the gentle rhythm of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, perfect for preschool, disastrous for midnight comedy. Associate director Bobby Quinn watched helplessly, stopwatch in hand, as the show disintegrated in real time. When the commercial finally hit, Carson let out a breath so heavy it fogged the desk in front of him. Post-show analysis confirmed the nightmare. Nielsen data showed a 3-point audience drop during Rogers' segment. The verdict was swift. Carson liked Fred Rogers. He even admired him. But that night, he made a call. Saints don't belong on late night. It wasn't personal. It was television triage. Rogers was never invited back. As Carson told staff, some people are too virtuous for this business, and this business moves too fast for them. Hundreds of viewers wrote in with praise for Rogers, but Carson had seen the truth. Noble hearts couldn't save sinking segments. And mercy meant never putting Fred or the audience through that again. Rogers joined an elite club, 7 guests Carson permanently banned. Geller's fakery, Chase's arrogance, Hope's cue cards, Newton's bullying, H's lectures, Rickles' chaos, and Rogers' tragic slowness. These weren't clashes of ego. They were Carson drawing a hard line to protect the rhythm of the show and the sanity of its host. Hosting at its core means knowing when a segment stops being entertainment and starts being sabotage, and having the courage to say, never again. So next time you watch an old clip of The Tonight Show and marvel at Johnny Carson's calm charm, just remember, behind the laugh was a man with boundaries. And when those lines were crossed, the curtain closed for good. Which band guest surprised you the most? Or do you think Carson was too harsh? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Hit that like button, subscribe. Thanks for watching.